If you're watching this, your days are numbered. Your life is on a ledger and you have a fixed and diminishing supply. It is for that very reason that every last day is valuable, and that's why your life is beautiful. Welcome, friends. I'm your host, Chaos, and I've got a special guest all the way from Austin, Texas with us today. We have the pleasure of picking the brain of a successful entrepreneur and 15-plus year combat medic veteran, platoon sergeant, and NCO. Let me introduce you to the man, the myth, the legend, the one who holds the power of life and death, creation and destruction, the Reaper himself, Patrick Riley. Patrick, welcome to the channel. It's a pleasure to have you here today. We appreciate you taking the time. How's things in your world?
Doing good, and thank you so much for the kind introduction. You don't mind if I call you Chaos, do you?
No, that's totally cool.
All right, Chaos it is. So yeah, doing great.
Good to hear, good to hear. So I covered Reaper in a previous video, but since we likely have some new viewers who are unfamiliar with the ecosystem, can you give us a quick overview of what Reaper Financial does and why people should be paying close attention to it before we go a little bit deeper?
Sure. So what Reaper does is we have a supply that actually inflates. We mint 1 million tokens per month and we sell them at market to generate funds. With those funds generated, we go out and purchase and destroy other cryptocurrencies, lowering their supply, increasing their demand, helping them find a new equilibrium and a greater value. That vote is based on the RPR token holders on the blockchain. So we have a blockchain voting mechanism that is fully functional. It's been deployed 22 times without flaw. And we also have a incoming product for debt reaping, where individuals will be able to go purchase Reaper and vote to destroy their own personal debts. And we will be making ACH payments towards their debts on their behalf. Our secondary product is ASC, or Ascension token. So we have both sides of the coin. We have life and death. The Ascension token goes and purchases 10 different other tokens at market, and it distributes those tokens to the holders of Ascension. So what that effectively does is it diversifies your portfolio. It helps you to dollar cost average in simply by holding ASC over time into a basket of well-vetted XRPL projects.
It definitely sounds super exciting, and you guys have a whole bunch of ambitious plans. I've participated in a couple of these votes myself and actually received some staking rewards, so that's pretty cool. With the 1-year anniversary of the initial Reaper token drop coming up here pretty soon, actually on December 19th, what other exciting things are coming down the pipes for RPR holders?
So the debt reaping obviously is the big one, and that's coming out in December. We're going to be launching the beta for that. And then the other surprise we've got coming for you, I don't want to ruin it, but it's going to be good, and it's going to do a lot of good.
Oh, so there's more surprises on the way. That I didn't know about. That's awesome. Can't wait to hear. As a Canadian, I have to at least try to lock down when debt reaping is going to be releasing in Canada? Do you have a time set for that yet?
So Canada should be able to release simultaneously with United States.
Oh, that's awesome. I noticed in your release dates there, Canada wasn't mentioned right away, but I figured that we're in North America, so it's going to be fairly similar. With many exchanges having regulatory issues in certain jurisdictions, such as the case of Ontario having unique rules to the rest of Canada, or in many cases, the USA being unable to participate in offerings, airdrops, or non-US exchanges, such as Binance.com, which countries or regions will be unavailable for debt reaping or other reaper services once things are fully implemented?
So currently the ACH plugins or APIs that we'll be using have service for North America, UK, all of the EU, Japan, Thailand, Singapore, and Australia. And we are looking at ways to expand into other countries in Southeast Asia as well as Africa.
Wow, that's fantastic. So due to the disruptive nature of Reaper, you must have a backup plan in case regulatory changes affect Reaper's ability to continue operating in a country or region where you have already become established. Can you please tell us a little bit about such a plan if it exists?
So we do have potential options to relocate to other nations. You know, there are basically tax haven nations where companies can go and operate if they have to. I don't prefer that option, but if necessary, Reaper Financial would uproot out of the United States and relocate. Alternatively, we do have the permanent drip trust fund, which if we had to shut down operations would be distributed to all RPR token holders relative to their holdings. But the more likely scenario is that we will countersue and we will fight in the courts, and it would probably be at least a 4 or 5 year battle, and we will win.
I don't disagree. I think Reaper has a serious chance at winning if that ever comes to that. I like that you have an answer for everything too. It's awesome. The white paper speaks of helping to lift people out of poverty and even becoming central to small nations' development and financial stability. It certainly appears that you guys are trying to get into many places as possible, as you just described. Can you elaborate more on this and the future plans? Please tell us which countries you're most excited to open up in, or where you believe that Reaper may have the most impact overall.
All of them. So we're going to start with the smallest countries. So small countries like Angola, Palau, Sierra Leone, countries that have a very small GDP and a very small population. And the reason we'll start there is because it's the fastest impact for the most people, is starting with the small countries and working our way up. At the same time, we do have plans to integrate into the United States government over time in a way that would replace and supersede other failed social welfare programs.
Wow, it's just absolutely crazy what you guys are trying to accomplish here. So I want to talk a little bit more about Reaper in detail. You mentioned reaping. Every RPR token holder should obviously be taking advantage of that. Can you tell us exactly how the reaping works, what coins can be reaped, how often the reapings are, and maybe what else we should know?
So right now the reapings are every 2 weeks. We are going to close it to every week once the price sustains over 40 cents for greater than 1 month. But currently every 2 weeks. The way that it works is essentially our RPR token holders go in and vote on a list of up to 20 tokens. And we have a total of around 40 tokens that are eligible. So they've met our criteria, and we found that they are less risk or lower risk than many of their peers. So those are our available tokens to vote on. And they go in and they simply log in with their XM wallet, which is completely self-custodial, decentralized. They don't have to put any finances or any money into our system at all. And when they log in, they're able to see their balance and put that balance of RPR token as a vote. 1 RPR equals 1 vote towards any of those tokens. And then when we generate the funds, we'll divide those funds against the number of votes for each token. And we go out and purchase them. We put them into a central wallet that's visible to everyone on the blockchain, that they can go and verify what we're doing. And we send them to the black hole addresses, or to a what we call a Viking funeral, which is basically an address where it can never come out. So they're set adrift.
That's really exciting. Like I said, I participated and got some of the staking rewards. So that's really exciting. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. One question that was asked that I'm interested in as well, since Reaper started a year ago, approximately what value has been burnt either in USD or XRP? Can you tell us?
It's over 500,000 XRP total in
Wow.
value. The US dollar value obviously has fluctuated depending on the XRP, but we calculate that in XRP.
So a key feature that we talked about is reaping your personal debt. Now, this is a fundamental aspect of Reaper and one of the main things that got me interested and fast. It's also one of the most disruptive and seemingly impossible pieces of the Reaper puzzle. So can you give us a rundown on debt reaping?
Yeah, sure. So similar to how you do your vote for reaping of other tokens, you're going to log in, and when you log into our site, we've basically plugged in other APIs, which is Plaid and Circle and Stripe and some of these payment providers and backdoors to banks. So what you'll be able to do is you'll connect a new account, and when you click to connect a new account, it's going to pop up with a list of banks, and you'll be able to search this. And currently there's about 28,000 banks globally participating in this program. And you'll be able to find your institution where you have your debts held, whether that's, Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac or Great Lakes student loans or just US Bank, whatever it is. You'll be able to pull that into the system, and you log into that account with that username and password, and that's going to pull all of your data from that account, which is your account number, routing number, balances, identity, so on and so forth. That's all going to pull into our system, and we're going to basically marry your accounts to your wallet address, and you'll be able to vote in percentages. So you can put 100% towards your mortgage, or you could do 50% towards your mortgage, 20% towards your car, 30% towards, a personal loan or a credit card or whatever it may be. Then we, as basically our data aggregation, is going to read your balance at the time of the finalization of the vote or the snapshot, which is going to be every 2 weeks or every 1 week. And it's going to tell us how many RPR is designated towards that debtor account. And we're going to divide that into a CSV file where we're able to see the balances due towards each account. And we put in basically the total amount of funds generated for the reaping. And then that divides it against all of the accounts. And we send that through our payment processor API. And that sends out a payment to every single account within usually about 72 hours it should take to process that payment.
I think that's awesome. You're saying 28,000 different institutions. Often in Canada, we feel pretty left out. So I feel like with 28,000 institutions being on board, and you mentioned Stripe as well, that's a very popular payment platform, that we should be able to definitely get involved with this here in Canada.
Yeah.
One question regarding this, are you able to do both debt reaping and voting on tokens at the same time?
Yes, you are. So you'll be able to divide your percentage of your total RPR tokens, and you'll have the option of your own liability accounts that you've pulled into the system. And you'll also have an option of adding favorites, which will be the tokens. So if you add your favorite tokens, you'll see those right along with your mortgage and other things, and you can vote on those in a percentage as well.
That's super exciting. So Reaper can add a deflationary mechanism to coins that don't natively have it, as well as burn your personal debt. How can this be possible? How can you integrate with banks, and how do banks and regulators feel about it? Have you had any talks with people in the banking sector?
So we actually don't need a bank's permission to do this, because we're literally just making a payment towards a debtor account, and anyone can make a payment towards a debtor account. But I imagine how a bank would feel about this is actually pretty good. Banks are able to give out more loans based off their own reserves holdings, which currently is set to 0, right? The mandatory minimum reserve is 0%. However, the more we pay debts in their bank, the better that bank is performing on their balance sheet, and the more loans they can give, the more income for that bank. So they're going to love it. They have no issue with somebody making payments to that bank effectively.
I'm quite surprised to hear that. I mean, it makes sense. Anyone can pay anybody's debts, but you would think the banks would kind of be hesitant or not involved. But the way you explained it makes a lot of sense. You touched on the DRIP stimulus and the DRIP trust fund earlier. Can you give us a little more information how this works, who's in control? And I mean, really, this is something that took me by surprise when I read it. That's why I think it's an important feature that we dig deeper on.
Yep. So the drip is when we do our sale of funds for the 1 million reaper per month, 48.5% goes towards the reaping. 1.5% is our operating fees, which usually goes towards transaction fees. And then 25% goes into the permanent drip trust fund, and 25% goes into a drip stimulus, which is paid out immediately to RPR holders in the form of XRP. So that's basically to incentivize continued contribution to the permanent drip trust fund. Once the interest bared by the permanent drip trust fund is greater than the 25% that would go out in the stimulus, we switch to paying out only the interest from the permanent drip trust fund, while the full 50% of the funds generated goes into the permanent drip trust fund. That way we're building the principal, and with a built principal, we're able to generate more interest end over end every month after. So once we transition from the stimulus to the permanent drip trust fund, there will be a stable growth on the drip.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So another thing that we touched on is Ascension, and that's part of the Reaper ecosystem, which includes adding life and opportunity. So recently, Reaper holders had the opportunity to get airdropped to ASC tokens in a 1-to-1 ratio to their Reaper holdings, which also gives you a hard-slotted token rain through the ASC mechanism, and we thank you for that opportunity. Do you want to talk a little bit more about Ascension, the hard-slotted tokens, and how it's tied into the drip stimulus and why it's so important to the ecosystem?
Yeah, so the hard slot tokens right now, only about half of them are block projects, which is the Blockchain Leadership Oversight Council. The Blockchain Leadership Oversight Council essentially does a full audit and deep dive into projects and has a constitution or a Bill of Rights that we recognize as being owed to the consumer by every blockchain company. And it comes with bylaws and code of conduct and values that basically every block project is an above board, high standard project that is going to do the right things, and it's going to be there for the long term to essentially not be a rug pull. And so by creating that standards organization and giving those organizations or those projects that meet that standard the ability to be a hard slot or an ASC hard slot token in the rain, we're basically taking the good projects, we're buying them at market, and we're spreading them out so that people can learn about them. And it helps to fight stagnation. So in a bear market, typically even the best of projects, they don't trade. They don't go anywhere, and the volume drops, and that's a problem. And the way that the traditional banking system or centralized exchanges address that problem is through a market maker, which they charge the project for. And so it hurts both the project and it hurts the end user. What we're doing is completely non-profit with ASC because we're not taking any profit from that product, but we're purchasing and distributing those tokens to all ASC trust line holders who also hold the trust line for those hard slots.
Yeah, that's sweet. I've received, I think, 6 or 7 tokens. I think I missed the trust line on one of them just in time, but either way, it's awesome. And I've learned a lot about these projects in receiving these drops because you're like, hey, what am I going to do with this? You know, I got to figure out. So what kind of impact is debt reaping expected to have as it releases across the world?
So debt reaping is going to fundamentally change the way people think about finance, money, and debt. So as we transition into CBDCs, which we will globally, the advent of debt reaping is going to rewire people's brains in the same way that Robert Kiyosaki's book Rich Dad, Poor Dad did, in that, you know, the majority of millionaires in the US, about 80 to 85% of them got there by using real estate. And real estate is debt in which they're taking out debt against, cash flowing assets and allowing renters to pay off that cash flowing asset for them while building equity. And those properties appreciate over time. And that's how most millionaires are made. What I've done with debt reaping is effectively made it so that people will have a ability to buy the same effect of owning a real estate property, but in any amount without any liability of renters or, renters insurance or those, having to replace a roof. So debt reaping is very much like taking the property market and the way that it grows and putting that into a digital standard.
Wow, that's exciting. That's really crazy. That's a lot to wrap your head around, I have to say. So since your future plans include having Reaper's own banking institution, does Reaper have any plans or abilities to facilitate what I believe to be one of the most critical pieces of DeFi infrastructure, which is cashing checks directly into a crypto ecosystem rather than into a bank? And if so, when can we expect to see such an innovation?
So we do plan on picking up a credit union within the next 2 years. Because right now, mortgages are down 30, or not mortgages, but real estate prices, resale is down 37%. And there's about 1.7 million homes in the US about to dump onto the market over the next year. So more than likely, there'll be a real estate crash, which causes a lot of credit unions to have issues. And we expect that some of them will be vulnerable to acquisition.
Wow.
So we do plan on picking up a credit union. But as far as the direct deposits, once we've moved to a CBDC and effectively with direct deposits, I don't see the CBDC being voluntary for very long. Effectively, the money that's in your bank account now will simply become CBDC versus, US dollar as it traditionally was, but it was already digital, right?
Right.
So they're just going to take what's in your bank account and turn it from a number on the screen to a cryptocurrency number on the screen. And most Americans won't even know the difference.
Yeah, totally. It's not all that different from traditional banking anyways.
It's really not. So with that, direct deposit is becoming the norm for the majority of employers. And with direct deposit, you'll see basically you're going straight to a cryptocurrency. And banks are already allowing for cryptocurrency holdings, or there's been laws in the United States passed to allow banks to hold cryptocurrency. So I think that's a problem that won't necessarily be solved by us. It will be solved by the market, and it will be a widespread availability to directly deposit into a cryptocurrency within about 2 years.
Do you think governments will be successful in completely removing cash from circulation?
Yes. So when we say completely within a limited form, but removing it from circulation to the point that it won't be widely accepted in stores, I think, yes. It will probably still be available in pawn shops and available in antique stores and,
Right.
collectors or trade shows, but it won't be something that you're going to walk in and pay for your groceries with.
That's a pretty bold prediction, but I think I have to agree with you. I think that's coming sooner than we want. I'd like to touch on a couple of the hard slot tokens. I noticed you got a pretty cool XStick NFT. It's pretty badass. For those who haven't heard of XStick, do you want to give them a quick couple rundown or a couple sentences of a rundown?
Sure. So XStick is the premier NFT project on the XRPL that has probably put out more content and all of it original than any other project. They have a chief artist, Sumi Stick, who I believe he's still anonymous, but he's very talented. He did the Reaper Genesis and Reaper Blood Money collections, as well as the X Army and hundreds of others of very cool collections that are very uniquely stylized, and they also offer utilities and they have auctions, and it's probably the best NFT community or closed community on the XRPL.
Yeah, they seem pretty active. I've talked to some of them, and I really like the NFT art. Oftentimes, NFT art is kind of like meh, but the XStick ones are really cool. Which of your favorite hard slotted tokens, if any, is your favorite?
Well, that's hard. I really like all of them, obviously, or they, if they've made it to that level, it's not because I like them, but if they've made it to that level, that means I probably like them. So I will say Exoj XOGE is probably my oldest friend in this space.
Okay.
He was the one to help me do my own airdrop a year ago, and kind of showed me a couple things on my way to opening up. So, he's kind of my favorite in a way, but not necessarily for the tokens, but just a good friend.
Awesome. Hey, I told you I'd be asking you some of the hard questions. So, as far as the hard slots go, I really like Treasury. I think it's probably my favorite. The Academy offers the Treasury tokens for completing lessons, and it's a great way to onboard new users and get people to learn about XRPL projects. StakeX, I think, is a close second, and there's a lot of buzz regarding that currently. It sounds like ASC is releasing on one of the staking pools in the next couple days here, and that's going to provide holders with ASC plus the hard slot Ascension Rain, which is super exciting, something everybody should look into. I also suggest anyone watching, if you're unfamiliar with the hard slotted tokens, take some time to go through the Treasury Academy and read through the white papers on each of the hard slots, and make sure you know what you hold. There's also white papers for every token that is on StakeX as well. But this ecosystem has a ton of potential, and we are really early. I recently released a video on Treasury Schmeckles, I should say, and Ascension, so I recommend you don't skip those. And everyone should also join the Reaper Telegram community. We have a lot of fun. We actively vote and join related streams, and you get to stay up to date with news, find the listed trust line for hard slots, and all the links for the Telegram and all the other associated links you're going to need are going to be found on Reaper's website at reaper.financial. If any viewers have any questions for Patrick and the Reaper team, leave them in the comments or in this Telegram, and either myself or Limitless James Anthony, who speaks to Patrick every Friday, will get the answers straight from him. And also check out JTXRP's video series, where your questions may have already been answered. There's a whole lot more to learn. So it's been quite the eventful couple of weeks in the larger crypto space, and many new investors are at maximum fear. To help quell some of the doubt and hesitation, which I'm sure you've already faced, and which will likely become more prominent as the project gains popularity and more sensational news surfaces, in a few sentences, can you explain why your average crypto investor should trust Reaper Financial and how Reaper protects their supporters and holders?
So I'll first say you shouldn't trust, you should verify. Trust is a dirty word to me, especially in untrustable times and untrustable environments. So it's the internet and it's crypto. So don't trust. Read the white paper and go check out our wallets. Do an audit yourself. Look at the burn wallets and find out, have we been doing exactly what we say we do? And the answer is yes. We, of course, are more than willing to defend our own, integrity at any point. But trust is basically you giving somebody permission to lie to you. If you were to trust FTX or Sam Bankman-Fried, you're basically saying, "Hey, do what you want with my money because I trust you." That's not the right answer. You are ultimately responsible for your investments and your actions. So do what's right by you. If you don't trust the company Reaper Financial or me, I don't fault you for that. I hope you did your due diligence, and best of luck to you.
You guys are really heavy on the transparency and self-regulation. For me, that's awesome. Many people involved with the ecosystem already know the answer to this, but newcomers absolutely need to hear it. How long does Reaper lock or hold custody of your tokens, and how difficult is it to get out of a position if someone wanted to?
So there's quite a bit of liquidity with Reaper on the DEX. So it's very easy to get out of a position from Reaper. And as far as, at what price point, I, of course, would not make price predictions. I will say on Bitrue, there's difficult liquidity because less than 1% of our supply is held on Bitrue for a centralized exchange. And we did not pay for the market maker bot that exchanges request or like for you to have. So with that, you have to use the market there or the orders for basically limit orders at the highest and work your way up or down. So if you're on the DEX, no issues.
And what's the best DEX to use to trade Reaper?
So all the DEXs for XRPL are actually the same DEX. So whether you're on XM or XRPL coins or Sologenic or XP Market, you're still using the same exact DEX. And really it comes down to what your style and your preferences. as far as which exchange interface you like. Personally, I'm a fan of xpmarket.io because they have a good display with a heat map and top 100 and the links to all of the different tokens, and also track your portfolio and your performance over time.
Gotcha. So we have a question from an excited and eager newcomer to the ecosystem. With 1 million new RPR and ASC tokens issued every month, how does Reaper protect against dilution of value for RPR holders? How is this sustainable?
So it's sustainable because of the demand. So the demand currently for Reaper to go out and reap other tokens and to reap debt, right, is 30,000 other cryptocurrencies currently in the ecosystem as of today, all of which are oversupplied or could benefit from a reduction in supply. And as far as debt, every single child born in the United States today was born $93,000 in debt to the United States government.
Wow.
And with that, there is $322 trillion in global debt. And not to mention the deficits for things like pension plans sitting at $78 trillion globally. So we have no shortage of demand for debt payments and for this system. And for ASC, the demand is that effectively by holding ASC, you're going to receive portions of future sales of a token. So that is a benefit to the ASC holder, and there's good cause or reason to want to have more.
So I got another question. This is one of the harder ones. Maybe not hard, but touchy ones possibly. Extreme was a hard slotted token at first, but it's no longer hard slotted. This shook some investors, caused some drama, and has left some folks asking why. Thankfully, I wasn't personally invested, but it appears the Telegram is unavailable and their website's down. Do you care to offer your view on this situation and give us some insight?
Sure. So initially, when we did our reapings, we had an eligibility criterion, which was a 1 to 100, and any project that scored over 70 points was going to be eligible for reaping. And that was basically to make it so that there would be no bias from myself. So 50 of those points were for go, no go criteria, such as being doxed, the white paper, being black hole, the governance roadmap, not being a sanctioned country, things like that. And then the others basically included time and market, as well as accountability, use case, and things of that nature. So Extreme had just barely passed that criteria, but it made over 70 points. So it was eligible for reaping. And at the time that I began the hard slotting process, that included projects having a holdings of RPR token for reaping their own project. So because Extreme had a holdings for their own project of Reaper token, they had used it basically to add to their investment fund, which they didn't require or need our permission to do. But because they were in that position, they were hard slotted because that was the most fair way to equate that with the other projects that would be hard slotted, was that they had a dedicated holdings. So once I actually let Tommy know before I launched that, this was something I was going to be doing, and I reached out, he cautioned me before we launched Ascension that he was looking at doing this merger with XRDC, which is effectively a soft rug of Extreme. So I wasn't a fan at all. I tried to talk him out of it. I tried to give him some better options, but he had committed to that course of action. So we didn't put Extreme on the first ASC vote, and then we removed it from the hard slots. So there was ultimately no harm done to ASC or Reaper holders. And one of the quick lessons learned there was that all hard slot tokens are going to have to be block compliant. So once the block launches on December 3rd, the current tokens that are not block members, which is only a few of them, they'll have 45 days grace period to begin the process of becoming a block member. And all future hard slots that wish to be added to the the hard slot tokens have to go through the block first before they become a hard slot member. And that will significantly reduce the risk to investors.
Good to know. Thanks for touching on that. Let's talk XRP a little bit. In my opinion and many others, this XRP lawsuit has been a sham, a total waste of time and money, and a black mark on the crypto market. Personally, I believe we're coming close to a resolution. Now, I saw you filed an amicus brief for the case. In fact, it's the 13th one. What a coincidence. Or is it? Do you wish to discuss the lawsuit in your brief with us today? And just for those of you who don't know, an amicus brief is also known as amici curiae. Basically means, when translated, friend of the court, or in this case, friend of XRP.
Yes. So friend of XRP decentralized, right? So not necessarily friend of Ripple, but definitely friend of the court, because the court is meant to represent the American people and, the voting body. So the reality is that this case is most definitely corruption. It was instituted by Hinman and Clayton. Clayton launched this the day before he left office. Gensler picked it up and ran with it. And there was so much foul play, it's hard to even grasp it. But at the larger level, the larger picture is that XRP and Ripple Labs have global saturation of more than 30% of nations onboarding for CBDCs to be part of the global financial system. And there are foreign adversaries that want to keep the United States from being a part of that and having the same ability to compete on a global stage. And those foreign interests have likely influenced this case having taken place, and in an effort to hold the United States back from competing on a global level.
What do you think will happen if, for some reason, however unlikely, Ripple loses? Will reaping still be a thing? Will it affect the whole world, or will XRP crash?
So I think if Ripple did lose this case, the first thing that happens is an appeals process, which takes another 2 years. So I don't think over is going to be over. I don't think Ripple will lose the case. However, that doesn't mean it's the end of the fight. And I also think that the settlement of this case very much depends on the midterm elections and the runoff elections for the Senate coming up in January.
That makes sense. Now, and if Ripple wins, you mentioned in a previous video something along the lines of 1 XRP will always be worth 1 XRP, but what that will equate to in the real world, we're not really sure. So like, it could be a donut, a car, a house, a yacht. Can you elaborate on that, or where you think XRP is heading in the case of
absolutely. So that's the thing about global reserves, right? So everyone talks about global reserves being a digital currency, and there's got to be some standard of measure in any system, whether that's, how much is a gram, or how much is a kilo, or how much is a pound. We have a standard somewhere, or we have, for a clock, we have an atomic clock to keep the most accurate, time. So in a system where we have CBDCs, we have to have a standard. That standard can't be Bitcoin because of its functionality, because of proof of work. It can't be Ethereum because of its functionality and proof of stake. And really the only contender for that spot is XRP. So now let's jump past all the wild price predictions and all the conspiracy nonsense and all of that stuff. And let's just say, okay, we're in a system now 20, 30, 40 years down the road where XRP has been determined that is the standard of measurement, right, for wealth on the planet. And as we're using XRP for the measure of wealth, every time you add to that wealth, every time something is made by, sweat equity, somebody builds a sauna, somebody builds a car, somebody has turned raw material into a usable product that was sold for profit. That value has now been added to the total ecosystem, and the total ecosystem is all the money in the world divided against the standard of measurement. And that standard of measurement, as it sits today, can only be XRP.
This could be absolutely staggering.
Yes.
Wow, that's a lot to chew on. Couple questions from our Telegram chat. Does Reaper Financial have keyman insurance on Patrick?
So not yet. We don't currently have keyman insurance, but we are looking at diversifying our permanent drip trust fund for the Reaper holders and diversifying a portion of that into a insurance plan, which is a daily compounding interest through Five Rings Financial out of Dallas, Texas. And what that essentially does is it, compounds daily interest in USD using basically mutual funds and things off the larger stock market. And then we are able to take that interest out as a loan against that insurance plan. However, you are not required to pay it back for that type of life insurance. And that also means that should I die in, an unfortunate accident or whatever it may be, the insurance would pay out likely more than what had already been put in. And that would then be distributed to Reaper holders, or it would become a part of the new permanent drip trust fund for whoever the new key man is.
Fantastic. And who, if anybody, has access to the specific financial information and personal identity information of token holders who register?
Currently myself and only myself.
So one of my favorite things about Reaper is based on the trustworthy, scalable, and fast XRP Ledger. It provides XRP rewards. And you kind of touched on this in the last bit when we were discussing XRP, but I'm sure many holders of XRP and RPR are curious. What made you choose the XRP Ledger rather than one of the many other blockchains available?
So the other blockchains are either too slow, too expensive, or not user-friendly enough to do what we do. So when we do the voting, right now with XRP, that's 0.000012 XRP, far less than a penny to cast a vote. Just imagine how difficult that system would be on an Ethereum blockchain or on a Bitcoin blockchain with a 30-minute transaction time. So it was very easy for us to determine that XRP was the best instrument to use for a financial and a voting implement.
I'll tell you for sure, I've been in crypto for a while, and any newcomers who've had any experience with Ethereum or Bitcoin or any of that will immediately understand why that it won't work, that you need something fast like XRP. The Zum wallet is an integral tool for interacting with the Reaper ecosystem, and it works for XRPL tokens and allows you to trade within the wallet or on Sologenic or the other dexes while retaining custody of your funds. This works as such due to smart contracts not being part of the XRPL. To interact with tokens in the Zum wallet, you must first set a trust line for each token, and each trust line requires locking up 2 XRP, which is returned if you decide to close the trust line. The step-by-step is detailed in my first Reaper video, which I will plug again because if you're new to this ecosystem, it's fundamental information. All the trust lines can be found on the Reaper website. Patrick, please tell us, what does the trust line accomplish? Is it safe, and why is it necessary to interact with the tokens in the Reaper ecosystem?
So what the trust line does is it allows your XRP wallet address to receive a sidechain token that has been designed by somebody else. So it's not giving access to your wallet by setting up a trust line. It's giving the ability for that token to be sent into that trust line and that token to be held on your XRP wallet. So you're not exposing yourself by setting a trust line. I know that's a misnomer that a lot of people worry about early on when they enter the XRP ledger. So to my knowledge, there is no exposure simply by setting a trust line.
Is that similar in a way to how API keys can link exchanges to like trading bots and stuff?
Essentially, yes. And the main benefit to the trust line system is that you're not going to get spammed with nonsense that you don't want. I was a little bit excited, I admit, when the XLS20 didn't use trust lines, and I was like, yes, now I can spam people with NFTs of poop emojis. But unfortunately, they have to claim them. So sorry, Jenna, you're not getting it.
Before we move on from wallets, I just want to touch on cold storage quickly. I believe anyone that's been in crypto for a while or who has more than $500 in crypto should be holding at least a portion of their holdings on a cold wallet. Personally, I use a Ledger and a Keystone, the latter being my favorite. But what cold storage wallets do you use or do you recommend?
Personally, my favorite is Trezor One. I like the Trezor because it's user-friendly, and the interface on the Trezor One is, in my opinion, superior to the Ledger Nano, which is a little bit more analog and rudimentary.
It's a little bit archaic.
Yeah, it's a little archaic. I like this interface on the Trezor. I also like the hard wallets that are literally, I have metal stamped wallets to keep keys on, and those are in a fireproof safe or in a safety deposit box. And should, the house burn down, it doesn't matter. I have that key. It's not going anywhere.
Yeah, those are pretty cool. I've got one of those as well. So into a bit about the market and what's been happening. CZ Binance pulled a hell of a shark move by making FTX insolvent over what appears to be a tweet posted by SBF. This was a while back, kind of a black swan event, although a lot of people saw it coming and were able to get their funds off. With more news coming to light, there's been suspicious hacks, suspicious tweets, fake paper coins being issued, several exchanges going bankrupt, and just a whole bunch of fire in the markets, essentially causing scrutiny from regulators and incredible fear in investors. Do you have any opinions on this fiasco? I mean, how do you think this is going to affect the industry as a whole?
I think this is more politics at play. It looks very much on the surface to be a money laundering operation. And I realize that there's those who say that's conspiracy, although the connections are very, very, very obvious and out in the open. So the long and short of it is the US Congress gave money to Ukraine. Ukraine put that money into FTX. FTX used that money for leverage to get loans and gave that money to members of Congress. So that's hands down, maybe they were unaware, which I am very skeptical of, but that's a, hook, line, and sinker 10-point shot. That's money laundering. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that.
It's a pretty crazy situation. Does this mess and massive downturn have any effect on Reaper, or maybe in a reverse Uno, does Reaper have any effect on these type of situations, or will it in the future?
These type of situations have been happening a lot lately, especially in this last year since we relaunched, right? There's been significant downturns in the market at a few points in 2022. And Reaper has come out on top of all of them, mainly because our utility is going to work regardless of what's going on in the macro market. And we've outperformed the peers in the market by about 200% if you look outside of the XRP Ledger. So really, every time the market turns down like this, it's opportunity for us, and we're just climbing, ever so slightly, and that's okay.
Yeah, since I did my first Reaper video just roughly 2 weeks ago, the price of the RPR token has basically doubled, and it's kind of been floating around double that. So it's interesting to see things moving up while everything else is going down. But it sure seems like centralization has been a key part of this issue. How does DeFi protect against this mess, and how does RPR fit into the security and protection side of things, if at all?
So DeFi protects against the mess because really exchanges are just a legacy leftover of an old banking system in which the first thing people did when they got cryptocurrency is go, oh, where do I store this? I'm going to put it in a bank. And that's exactly what a CEX is, except that the CEX has far, far, far less protection and regulation than a banking institution. So obviously, my opinion is pretty clear on this. You should always self-custody, and if it's not your keys, it's not your crypto. If you put it in a centralized exchange, it's not yours anymore, and you might get it back, you might not. As far as how Reaper plays into that and protecting is, we pay the drip or the passive income to the decentralized self-custodial wallets. We do the same with the Rain for Ascension, and you hold it all on your own self-custodial wallet to vote. We don't custody any funds, and we are working on our own exchange. Our exchange will never custody any cryptocurrency funds either. It will work through the decentralized wallets, similar to a DEX, with some added benefits.
You guys are really revolutionizing finance. Now we're getting close to the end here. Before we move on to last final couple things, I just want to ask if you have any opinions on Elon's Twitter takeover, and if you think that Twitter or crypto Twitter is headed in the right direction since that happened.
So I think it's a good thing. Twitter before Elon was definitely a less safe place to voice an opinion. Obviously everyone has an opinion, like they have other things, and some are wrong, some are right, some are neutral. So we're going to see some poor takes out there as well, and that's okay. That's what freedom of speech is all about. I will say I think Elon is going to flip Twitter to be something much, much bigger than it is now. So from his early days in the 90s when he was doing Zip2 and PayPal, he was talking about something called X.com, and he was all about building everything app that would be the internet, right? So now that he has Twitter, and part of his investment is actually Binance put in 500 million to that investment to buy out Twitter. So we know cryptocurrency integration into Twitter is coming. We also have Starlink, global internet coverage, along with mobile broadband coverage coming in 2023. So to think that this global, decentralized, very difficult to shut down, Russia couldn't shut it down in Ukraine, internet and cell phone coverage with, a payment protocol plugged into it is not going to take off would be silly. It's going to become effectively the front door to the decentralized internet will be Twitter. I expect it will become effectively his X.com design, and it will be similar to the operating system of the internet over time.
So on a bit more of a personal note, you've already talked about Block a little bit, but you're the CEO of Reaper, but you're also the chairman of the Block committee, the CFO and owner of Dakota Rings, which is a Web3 blockchain solution company, the principal of Fortify, and the owner of Sticks. Can you elaborate a little bit more on these and give us maybe a little bit about what they're about?
Sure. So obviously y'all know what Reaper Financial LLC is. So Block, and I talked about that. Fortify is a subsidiary of Reaper Financial, which is a real estate investment company. We're looking right now at closing on our first 15 unit income property. And basically it will be a proof of concept for phase 5 of the Reaper white paper, in which this income property produces $8,600 per month. And the bill on it will be roughly $4,200 per month. So the difference will go into purchase of RPR token, which will then be held against the debt on that property to reap the mortgage of that property and snowball the equity. Using a HELOC, we can then home equity line of credit on that mortgage. We can then go out and cash purchase another income property, increasing that, and using the rich dad poor dad model along with debt reaping to snowball a property real estate investment company into a much larger holding, which will then become kind of a financial backbone that supports Reaper Financial during market downturns, to ensure that basically our employees will be paid out of that income, so that regardless of what happens to the price of RPR, our employees will not need to be laid off based on a downturn in RPR price or ASC price or something of that nature.
That's killer. No pun intended.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, a little bit about the Sticks and the Dakota Rings, please.
So Sticks is a LLC that is formed specifically for housing the exchange, because the exchange will live under different rules and different laws, and it will be based out of North Dakota due to banking regulations for North Dakota. And the Bank of North Dakota, if you don't know, is one of the only banks in the United States that has its own charter. It does not have to follow the Federal Reserve rules. So it can do things a little bit different, and that's part of our intention there. And we're expecting 12 to 18 months to launch the River Sticks exchange. And then the other one is Dakota Rings, which is a team currently of 6 people that are basically executives from Microsoft and different, I don't want to say all the companies because I don't want to give away the connections. So all different executives in different tech sectors that we've come together to design a company to build out the blockchain products that are needed to solve problems. One of the things I'm also working on is a book called Tokenize the World. And basically what I've done in this book is I've taken every problem you could possibly think of, from, abortion and racism to the death penalty to, malnutrition to, pretty much anything that's controversial. And in this, I'm breaking down the ways that each of these problems can be addressed through blockchain applications and how blockchain could solve these issues or improve these issues. So Dakota Rings is basically the company that will build out the software to apply to solving these issues.
One final question. When and where is the first Reaper convention?
So we're looking at April or May in Austin, Texas.
That's exciting. As a closing message to our viewers, Patrick, based on your extensive military experience, your exposure to crypto, your education, and your success, what advice can you give to new investors and those who are still trying to find their place in the relatively small crypto community and the world as a whole?
So this is not investment advice, but more so life advice. And it's not my own, it's from Socrates. True knowledge comes from knowing that you know nothing. And I would encourage you to go out and learn, but never assume that you know.
That's a fantastic closing statement. Thank you, Patrick, for joining us. This has been very informative and fulfilling, and I've had a good time, and I hope you've enjoyed doing this with me.
Thank you, Chaos.
I think we should get together periodically to discuss updates and keep our viewers informed. For the viewers that are watching right now, make sure to like this video, subscribe to stay in the loop. Again, leave any questions or comments you want to present to the Reaper team, and be sure to tune in Friday to a weekly AMA with Patrick on another one of our community members' channels. You can find him on YouTube at James Anthony. Thanks for watching. Be smart, always do your own research, and don't get scammed. See you in the next one.